before I get to some introductions and have the panelists introduce themselves, I just wanted to welcome you all to our Peerplug Fireside Chat series. This is a really unique series that we're doing this year to help expose people to different career trajectories and different explorative programs that can help you get your career started in the right way. So if you hear the sound of my voice, you're in the right place. We'll be recording this session, and I'll tell you a little bit more about where you can find the recording of the session in just a few moments here. I also wanted to make sure I introduce myself. I'm the moderator of the event, but as you know, by looking at the screen, or maybe you just know me by reading my name tag in the Zoom room, my name is Chelsea Perry, and I'm one of the co-founders of Peerplug alongside my friend and colleague, Inno. We've been working on Peerplug now for the greater part of 3 years, and we started this company when we were administrative fellows way back in the day. So it's really, really a joy to be here with you, and it's really a full circle moment for us as we help people find their right career fit, and maybe a leadership development program or administrative fellowship program is the way that you decide to get that start. Just a little bit about me. I'm currently in school again, so I'm a graduate student getting my MBA at the Wharton School in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I graduated with my master's in healthcare administration from Virginia Commonwealth University back in 2017. So a bit of a time ago. And as you can see there on the screen, I've done a number of things between now and then, including a fellowship at Kaiser Permanente, a program management role at DaVita Kidney Care, which ultimately led me to my last role before business school at CVS Health, where I was a product development manager for our kidney solutions team. Currently, I'm interning and I'm at Amazon for the summer on the Ring team. So learning a lot about connected smart home security, which literally has nothing to do with healthcare, but I'm really, really excited to be here and just be at the intersection of technology and innovation, some of what you might see in a fellowship perhaps too. You can see some of my interests there down at the bottom of the screen, but I'd be remiss if I didn't introduce you all to Peerplug. Like I mentioned, Inno and I founded Peerplug nearly 3 years ago when we were fellows in our respective roles. And our dream was to really help people that come from diverse or underrepresented backgrounds get exposed to career paths that traditionally we may not see ourselves in, or we may not have access to by virtue of our upbringing, our communities, or even some of the things that we studied in undergrad. And so Peerplug is this really unique community and place where you can find others that identify as diverse talent or perhaps allies that are trying to help you break into top careers at their companies or other companies that you dream of working at someday. And so we want to invite you to join the Peerplug platform, create a profile, and start to browse some of the insiders and mentors that are on the platform that are really, really keen to connect with you and help you understand some of the things that they've been up to in their careers and how might you find a similar pathway. What's also cool about the Peerplug platform is, in addition to being able to direct message people and do networking, you can also get access to a lot of free events and workshops, much like the fireside chat we're doing today. You can hear people's hot takes about things that are going on inside of their company. For example, how to negotiate your first role out of the administrative fellowship, or what does it mean to be a part of the Black or Latinx employee resource group at a particular company. You can also find opportunities to start or continue your career in healthcare outside of that field. We're really interested in helping expose people to other career fields such as finance, tech, consumer packaged goods, retail, you name it. I think there's a really, really interesting career landscape out there for those that are coming out of undergraduate or graduate programs. And we hope you'll leverage the Peerplug platform to find out what are those different things that are being offered to early careerists. So without further ado, I just wanted to make sure I invited you to learn a little bit more about our platform by using the QR code that you see there on the screen, and also learning about some of our career accelerator programs, which some of our panelists might allude to or speak about their experience with during this fireside chat. So I'll pause there, and I want to make sure that I get a chance to have you all, our panelists, introduce yourselves before I hop into a ton of questions that I've prepared for you, and also keep an eye on the Q&A section to see what questions our panel or our audience members have for you. So how about we start with Chloe there up top? You're the first one I see on my screen. So if you don't mind, just coming off of mute and sharing a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Chelsea. Hi, everyone. My name is Chloe Goodman. I'm originally from Minnesota, did my master's in healthcare administration at the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities, then completed my fellowship down at Legacy Advocate Aurora Health, now Advocate Health. And I'm currently a manager at Advocate Good Shepherd Hospital, overseeing Smart Farm and the Health Management Center. Great to be with you all.
Thanks for being here, Chloe. Shamari, did you want to go next?
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Shamari Pittman. I graduated from Florida A&M University with my master's in healthcare administration. I'm currently coming up on my second rotation in the general management and development program at CVS Health, and I currently work as an implementation manager within service operations for national accounts.
Excellent. Thanks for being here. Michael, how about you go next?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Drew Jr. I'm originally from the Chicagoland area, grew up outside on the suburbs of Chicago. I received my master's in healthcare administration at Loyola University Chicago with a concentration in community partnership and engagement. And I am currently in my first year of my 18-month administrative fellowship at Common Spirit Health, where I'm working out of the Southern California division at St. John's Regional Medical Center in Oxnard, California. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And we'll round it out with you, Shay Rose.
Everyone, thanks, Chelsea. My name is Sharose. I am originally from Chicago. I actually finished up my Master of Public Health at the University of Minnesota. So it's good to see you again, Chloe. And I'm actually on day 2 of my fellowship. I just started this week at Kaiser Permanente, and I'm currently based in San Jose. So thank you again for having me, and I'm really excited to be here.
Great. So let's get into it, y'all. I have a ton of questions prepared for you. Like I said, I'll be monitoring the chat and also pulling some questions from the audience, but I wanted to start out just by learning a little bit more about, what postgraduate opportunities were, when you were in the shoes of a lot of our audience members, were you interested in exploring or applying to? And if you could tell us a little bit more about, those opportunities, but also what your application strategy was. So we'll start with you, Chloe, and then we'll follow down the same line of how you guys did your introductions.
Yeah, so I was really interested in fellowship roles post grad school. I knew that I still had a lot to learn about healthcare in general, and I felt like the fellowship really provided a great foundation before jumping into a leadership role. In terms of my overall strategy, I used Appcelerator and actually worked with Chelsea and a lot of her team to help prepare for the fellowship interviews and just kind of the overall process. My program helped as well, but I think just the work in terms of accountability and making sure I had my materials ready to go, I think Appcelerator really helped me with that overall. And I kind of took the approach to apply really all over the US in terms of opportunities. I knew that the fellowship experience was pretty competitive, so I wanted to maximize my opportunity and applied to about 10 to 12 different roles across the US to really ensure that I could have a chance of getting a role overall.
We'll go to you next, Shamari, and love to see you repping my old employer, CVS Health. So tell us a little bit more about, was that in your plans? What was your application strategy? What were you interested in when you were in grad school?
Yeah, thank you. So coming out of grad school, I didn't really know for sure exactly what I wanted to do in terms of healthcare. I didn't know if I wanted to go into like an actual full-time role or if I actually wanted to explore like a fellowship program or some type of rotational program. So the fact that I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do kind of was an immediate answer that I needed to at least start searching for opportunities in terms of fellowships and rotational programs, just so I could get more exposure and just kind of explore different types of roles and different types of areas and things of that nature. So I kind of just divided and conquered, honestly. I just kind of picked like my top favorite healthcare systems, my top favorite just corporate systems as it related to healthcare, looked at what all they had to offer, worked with Appcelerator, worked with some of my mentors and stuff like that. And I probably picked, like Chelsea, like Chloe said, I probably picked about 10 to 12 places to apply to. And I really just kind of really honed in and made sure I kind of met all the requirements for those specific places. At first, I kind of was scared coming out of like grad school. I kind of wanted to apply to everything, just to kind of be safe, but you'll get burnt out really quick trying to do that. So I definitely recommend it. I definitely recommend picking it down to like 10 to 12 places and really making sure you kind of fine tune and get everything together for those. And the experience was cool. Being able to lean into mentors through Accelerator, lean into like my personal mentors and stuff like that was it was a very seamless experience, honestly.
Awesome. Michael, let's go to you next. Tell us more.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a pretty similar story to some of my fellow panelists. I pretty much knew I wanted to go in the direction of administrative fellowship. Actually, really early on, I would say, during my undergrad is when I was like very briefly exposed to, what administrative fellowship was. And from there, I knew that I wanted to, receive that type of mentorship and be able to, take advantage of the opportunities that administrative fellowship presented. So with that, I moved forward with as far as just kind of my strategy. Again, similar to my other panelists here, I pretty much utilize Peerplug, formerly Accelerator, with receiving mentorship from not only Chelsea but one of my one-on-one mentors with regards to just kind of how I can go about interviewing strategies, how I can really maximize my own output so that I'm putting my best foot forward within all of my applications. And I submitted probably right around the same number as well, about 10 to 12. So pretty similar story to everyone else here, to be honest with you. I mean, I wanted to ensure I didn't put my eggs all in one basket, and I gave myself a fair chance to really explore. But at the same time, I'd echo what Shamari was kind of stating as far as just really just being sure that you're looking at best fit as well. And that was kind of another, aspect of how I went about applying. I didn't necessarily just apply to anybody, but I made sure that, I was going in the direction that I felt was going to be good for me to, further excel.
Definitely sensing a pattern here. So Sharose, tell us, did you do anything different? Did you also apply to 10 to 12 places? What
No,
is that for you?
no. So like I said, I'm from Chicago and I did my undergrad and grad school in the Midwest in Wisconsin, Minnesota. So I was trying to get out of the Midwest and I was trying to kind of apply different places. And I just knew I wanted to be either on coast. So the coasts were really important to me. So I honestly applied, maybe I should have applied to more, but I applied to maybe 3. And I knew that Kaiser was my number 1 choice. And so I remember I shouldn't probably have put all my eggs in that basket. I kind of was really hopeful with that. And I think with Accelerator or Peerplug now, you all did such a great job in trying to coach me and mentor me. I remember being with Chelsea one-on-one and having conversations with her and how to kind of prep for the interviews and my application and whatnot. And so for me, that was a little bit of a different story. But yeah, I think fellowship, like everyone else, like I really wanted to pursue a fellowship at the end of the day. I think it was a great learning opportunity for me. And if not, that didn't work out. I was also looking at consulting jobs as well. But at the end of the day, I wanted to do a fellowship.
Nice. Definitely a gamble, Sharose, and you made me nervous throughout your process when I heard how many were on your list. But we'll talk more about that perhaps later in the session. But I'm curious because a lot of you all talked about, tailoring your application strategy and sort of paring down the number of places that you are applying to based on like your own criteria. And it'd be really, really interesting to hear about, what sort of inputs or criteria should folks be developing when they're looking at opportunities and evaluating, whether or not something's right for them. Because, oftentimes we hear of this fit word, which can be really nebulous and vague and look different for everyone. So tell us a little bit more, and anybody can come off mute and speak to this about specifically what was in your criteria and how did you prioritize what was important?
I think I can start. A couple of things that I prioritized was looking at if I wanted to do a 1 or 2 year fellowship. I think that was something that, I don't know if it was you, Chelsea, or one of my mentors that I talked about a lot. And then also for me, I was really cognizant of the people that I had met, whether it was through like one-on-one, just like kind of one-off coffee meetings or during the interview process, just making sure I felt comfortable talking to them. I felt like it was kind of a feeling that I picked up on for the certain organizations that I was looking at. And then to connecting the organization's purpose or values to my why was important to me. Somebody that I was working with during my residency, so my internship in between first and second year, had talked a lot about making sure you know your why for getting into healthcare and then connecting it back to whatever organization you apply to. So that was another kind of variable that I kept in mind, making sure that I'd be able to connect my why to the organization. If not, then I would pass on that organization moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the elements that Chloe is speaking to, I definitely took into account. I would also say, for me, I really took an emphasis on taking a look at the previous fellows of that administrative fellowship program. So what I mean by that is, where are they now? What was kind of their path? How did they go from A to B? How do they go about attaining the administrative fellowship? And, in all honesty, I also, observed the diversity, right? I mean, I wanted to ensure that, there was, a place, a program that really invited, diversity, equity, inclusion within its own structure, and ensuring that, they were uplifting those that were, in their program. And then finally, I also took into consideration location. I know that that's, something where it's like, you don't necessarily at first really think about, where you're going to be when you're applying to administrative fellowships, but it is very important, at least for me it was, because this is a time where you're packing up your things and you're moving right along and you're going from, from where you were to where you're going to be for the next 1 to 2 years and possibly more. And so that was something that was, pretty vital for me, just kind of understanding the atmosphere, the environment of where the administrative fellowship was taking place, and just kind of going from there.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Chloe and Michael for sure. Definitely what Chloe was saying about the timelines and things that you were looking for to get out of like a fellowship or a developmental program. Do you want a 1-year program? Do you want a 2-year program or a 3-year program? Like Michael was saying, do you value diversity more? Do you value location more? Being able to tangibly and verify those things that you want for yourself definitely can help you kind of connect the dots in terms of figuring out if you're a good fit or not. Once you start getting into these like one-on-ones with current fellows and like coffee chats with people at these organizations and things like that. I know for me personally, I wanted a rotation or a leadership development program that was more project-based, where I could work on a lot of smaller projects. Some programs you own like one big project for the whole time instead of versus working on a lot of smaller ones. So it's really all about what you value the most. And then for me, I wanted to go to a program that would highlight a lot of my weaknesses more, where I could, sharpen up my weaknesses and stuff like that. You want something that I wanted something that kind of challenged me a little more. So being able to, verify, articulate your strengths and your weaknesses, and then being able to kind of look at those positions that will put you in a position to where you're kind of uncomfortable and kind of push you a little bit more in a direction that you may not necessarily go in, if you were able to lead yourself. That was something that kind of I valued in my process. And so in terms of just reaching out to current fellows and networking with current fellows, I pretty much laid out like the 10 to 12 opportunities I was interested in, looked at all of the current people in those programs and just connected with them on LinkedIn and reached out to them, sent them a message, told them I was interested in the program. I seen they're in that position right now, asked them if they had a minute to talk or could we set up some time to kind of just speak one-on-one so I can learn more about their experiences. And just genuinely kind of just want to know about, what their experience is like how has it been, how was the onboarding process? What's it been like since they've been there? What things have they been working on? What's it looking like moving forward? Like what's next after they finish their program? Things like that is kind of how I facilitated that conversation. So that was kind of my process for it.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Shamari, Michael, and Chloe have said. I think this is how I viewed it was like when I was having those informational interviews and like talking to people at these organizations, like for me, like in simple terms, vibe was really important. Like if I can have a really good conversation with people, like the fellows, the leaders there or whatnot, like I knew that I could see myself there. Like if I could have those really organic, natural conversations, like I think one thing that I always like reminded myself, it's like you can go for like the biggest name, biggest fellowship, but I think the biggest thing should be like no matter what fellowship or whatever you end up doing, that you can see yourself fit in those organizations as well. I think was really big to me. And what Michael was saying about location, I think is super important. I think, you know, if you want to be in a rural medical center versus a suburban or urban, I think it's very important to keep that in mind and how you are kind of shifting your whole life and moving maybe like sides of a country. I think that's really important to keep in mind as well.
Great points that you all made. And just based on some of the responses that you all gave, I'm very interested in learning a little bit more about, you know, which parts of the application journey challenged you the most, especially as you reflect on like, you know, what you had to put together from a paper application standpoint, but also an interview standpoint to get to where you are now. I think, you know, a part of my work with Peerplug has been seeing folks over index on one aspect of the application more than others. And I'm really hoping that you all can give advice to the audience today about how to like play to their strengths and weaknesses and, you know, focus on particular aspects of that application journey. So we'll start with, let's mix it up a little bit. Let's go Michael first, and then maybe Shiro, Shamari, Chloe, to give Chloe some time to think this time.
I need time to think. No, I mean, I would say the components of the application that I'm most keyed in on was the interview process. And this is not to say that any of the other portions of the application are any less important. I think that for me, understanding that, my strengths, kind of what you're talking about, Chelsea, my strengths lie more where I'm able to talk to the individual, I'm able to have a conversation, understand who they are, kind of get their vibe and really be able to kind of connect. That was where I wanted to be at my sharpest. That all being said, I will say another key piece that was a very close second would have to be my writing portions, because I've seen and heard various stories of how people have been knocked out of the application process like that, all because of the fact that they had some type of specific error where they may not have changed the name of the organization in the writing template, or they may have been referring to a specific location that they were not applying to with regards to how it may fit for them. So, very little things within those writing portions were also very important for me. But I would say that, the interviewing, just making sure that I'm taking my time, being succinct and as concise as possible, following the STAR method. Those were all very important tactics for me to really ensure that I was, kind of telling my story and being able to portray my own experiences for, whomever I was speaking to.
Oh, your audio, I can you all hear Shiro's? I can't hear her.
No, I can't hear Shiro's.
We'll come back to you. Yeah, we'll come back to you. How about you, Shamari?
Okay, yeah, no problem. So for me, I probably would encourage everyone in two parts, essentially both of them. Michael said, except I would switch it around. The first thing I would focus on is the personal statement, I would say. Really being able to tell the story. That's kind of the first thing everyone's going to look at. I feel like when they come to your application, what brought you here? Why do you even like healthcare? And even deeper than that, like, why do you like us specifically if you are into healthcare? Being able to articulate that in a writing format, and then being able to go into the interview and tell that story, and so they can really, feel those emotions, feel why you're there, feel the passion, and things like that really make a difference in terms of, you know, why you do get selected, why you don't get selected, why you do move forward, why you don't move forward, things like that. So I would definitely say, I would encourage anyone to really, really, really fine tune your personal statement for sure. And it might look different between organizations, honestly. It might not look the same. You might not have just one personal statement that you use. It might look different. The reason you might want to apply to HCA might be different than the reason you want to apply to Kaiser Permanente, and articulate that. There's nothing wrong with that. I would say articulate that and be able to, you know, say why you chose one over the other, like why you're interested, why you don't. It may be some type of personal investment you have, like a family member, or like something in your community that the organization did. Say that, say all of those things, anything that you can drive that personal connection. And then, like Michael was saying, when you come into the interview, just be able to say that, connect those dots and kind of tie it all together. Honestly, the interview should really just be kind of like the icing on the cake, honestly. Being able to prepare for the interview, answering the behavioral questions, the personality questions that might ask you, and even some cases like a case study if you have it. I feel like you can always prep for those on the back end, but being able to tell that story in a personal statement will get you really, really far, and at least get you to that point for sure.
Can you hear me now? Okay. I was just saying that I think for me, interviews was super big. And I think what Shamari just mentioned, I think like case studies for me was really important to prep and practice on. And just, I'm someone that like tends to like talk and ramble sometimes and when I speak to people. And I think for me, a lot of it was around like sharpening up like my skills and like getting to the point right away and being concise. And so definitely like mock interviews. And I know doing a couple with Peerplug as well with my mentor, but also using like someone who I trusted, like some friends, and just doing like interviews with them as well to practice those behavioral questions and those case study questions, I think was something that I really needed to work on. But yeah, like what Shamari was mentioning, I think your personal statement it is very important, as that's like the first thing people see about you, unless you did like informational interviews with them. But I think at the end of the day, prioritizing, you know, finding what your strengths are and what your areas of improvement are in the beginning before you kind of start your application journey is really beneficial at the end.
And then I would just agree with a lot of what my co-panelists were saying. I think I mentioned the why piece earlier, but really connecting it to the organization in your personal statement. I think it's pretty easy to tell when you like copy and paste based on, you know, from one organization to the next, so really taking your time there. And then one other piece I'd mention in terms of interviews, especially if you have like a panelist interview and you know who's going to be in the room with you, doing a little research on the back end always helps. Or to help you prepare for that panelist interview. I found that to be helpful for me too. So yeah, just doing your homework to prep for those interviews, I think was helpful for me. So sorry, Chelsea, not one particular. I feel like I was focusing on everything when it came to the fellowship preparation.
No, that was great. And I'm going to stay on you, Chloe, because I think a lot of people go through this process of trying to figure out if an administrative fellowship or a leadership development program is for them because they want to be a leader in healthcare or some other field that is, you know, interesting to them or that they're passionate about. And a lot of people see this as a vehicle to be able to become a people manager for the first time, or be, you know, a program manager or individual contributor in a really big way. After that 12 to 36 month long experience. And so since you are in that role now, and that may have been the role that you've envisioned, you know, when you were in the application process, but also when you were in your fellowship, we'd love to hear a little bit more about how, you know, the leadership development program prepared you for the role that you're in now.
Yeah, so it prepared me in a lot of different ways. My primary project for the fellowship is actually now part of my current role. So my preceptor at the time was like, do you want to stay on with your project? And we can kind of construct a role for you, which was super awesome. So that's part of it in terms of the project overall. I was working on a smart farm expansion plan, and now I oversee the farm, which is very different from healthcare, but a cool project nonetheless. And then I think too, the fellowship overall, just with the rotational piece at the beginning of the program, allowed me to connect with different leaders and understand kind of the overall system landscape, to know who I can contact for specific questions. With Smart Farm overall, there's a lot of different moving parts, whether it's legal, finance, construction. So knowing who to go to for some of those specific questions, and understanding who needs to be at the table for larger meetings that I might be leading. And then two, actually, not like more indirectly in the fellowship, I had a couple of direct reports that were reporting to me. So I kind of got to practice what that people management looked like. So then when I entered into this, my current role where I'm overseeing Smart Farm and then the Health Management Center, and I have more direct reports, I was able to kind of get my feet wet a little bit in the fellowship, just having a few and then expanding it further once I entered into the permanent role.
That's fascinating. And yeah, your role is really interesting. I can't wait to do some snooping on LinkedIn and other places to learn a little bit more about what it is that you do, because I think it's really brilliant for a health system to sort of create something in that way. So I'm really, really curious about what it is that you do, and we can talk more too after this. But I want to make sure I go over to one of the questions that we have in the chat before proceeding on some of the other questioning that I had. So someone in the chat wants to know from the fellows, what recommendations do you have for thinking on your feet when it comes to those case studies or kind of case interview questions that you don't know about? Is there advice on finding case studies that you could relate to the administrative fellowship process that you're applying for? Tell us more about your experience with like case prep and getting ready for that aspect.
I can start on that one. So with case studies, I think the most important part is when you're asked a case study, like don't answer it right away. I think
we'll come back to you. I feel like you were about to drop a gem, so I'm like on the edge of my seat. But who else wants to talk about their experience with case studies and case prep?
Yeah, I can just speak towards like my preparation process. So for me, when I first had to do a case study for my first interview, I hadn't had any experience with case studies before. So a lot of my friends who were in school and stuff like that, and were in the process of applying to a lot of like consulting firms and stuff like that, had case studies for their interviews that they were presented like beforehand, that they had to prepare and present like during the interview. So I kind of just leaned into them, honestly, and we kind of all worked together. Like they let me see their case studies that they were working on, and I kind of went through and practiced with them. And now some of them went on to work for like McKinsey and Accenture and Deloitte and stuff like that. But seeing them kind of work on the case studies and hearing their thought processes in terms of how they answered it, why they're answering it this way, and then kind of comparing it to like what my answer would be and kind of how they're answering it really helped prepare me. Just kind of on the fly, like when I got into that, the real case study that I was interviewing for and stuff like that, it just kind of helped me think about it from like a more holistic standpoint and not just have like a narrow mind or a tunnel vision view based off what I kind of felt like my answer would be. So definitely lean into friends and anyone kind of going through the same process. That was my most valuable resource for sure. I don't know what I would have done without them, honestly, in terms of like being able to go through, see and kind of work with other people going through case studies as well was like the best resource, because I didn't have much luck looking like online for just random case studies as it related like directly, but seeing how other people think about it was definitely valuable for sure.
I can just jump in. I think similar to what Shamari was saying, really leaning into my mentors was helpful too, and understanding how they kind of think through case studies or just challenging things that they're dealing with in their day-to-day and kind of understanding their overall thought process. And then I feel like Sharos was going to say this, but just pausing. I know sometimes you want to answer right away, but pausing to kind of gather your thoughts and collect them so you're not just spewing words is also helpful. Be comfortable with that silence for a minute. It's all right. It's shorter than you actually think, I would say, just to kind of gather your thoughts before providing an answer.
Hi. Okay, great. I'm so sorry. I'm again on day 2, and so I'm still trying to figure out my technology, but I heard what Chloe was saying. I agree. I think silence is 100% okay. I think when you're so used to thinking on your feet and answering right away, you start to fear silence. It's actually totally fine to ask, like, can you repeat that part? Or can I take a second to write down what you just said, and really formulate your responses. And it's okay to ask clarifying questions too. And I just remember, again, plugging in Peerplug, but I just remember also working through sample case study questions with my mentor as well. And so I think case studies are those one part that's just sometimes you don't know what you're going to expect, but at the end of the day, they're very, I would say, straightforward and logical if you really pause and think for a second. And so, yeah, I think for me, a lot of it was just being comfortable with silence and being okay with asking follow-up questions.
I think I would add one piece of advice as well, especially, and this is more so if you find yourself in a setting where you're asked a case study question and you're in a group dynamic, really be cognizant of your other team members that are in that group, because they're your interviewers, they're observing every piece of how you go about answering that question, right? Not just whether or not your strategies and the way that you're able to devise some type of workflow to resolve the matter, whether or not that makes sense, but also how do you approach working in a team, and how are you when it comes to being able to receive input, be able to provide input, and just kind of what does it look like when you are around others that have that equal kind of feedback, the equal amount of feedback that they can provide. So that's something that I think is very important as far as what I was always given with regards to taking on a case study.
Yeah, I agree with all the points that you all made. Really, really good insights. And I think part of the challenge is just knowing whether or not you're going to get a case question or not, which is part of the journey that we are on as Peerplug to help people understand what they're up against. I mean, a lot of us have been in roles or have interviewed for things where generally you're being asked behavioral interview questions, and those are hackable. Like, people can figure out how to say the right things in an interview process, and a case question is a little bit harder to BS because people want to know how your analytical mind works, and they want to see some of those tactics that you all spoke about, like knowing when to think and not talk, and some of the understated things that people don't realize that they're being evaluated on. So I really appreciate you all for talking about some of that. And if you're interested in some of those tactics that we talked about, I mean, Peerplug on our platform, we have a plethora, or will have a plethora of free resources that you can access and leverage to get better at casing specifically. But there'll be other stuff about like how to get your resume framed for a consulting type opportunity versus a leadership development program. So I encourage you, if you haven't already, to make a profile and check some of that stuff out. And one other shameless plug, and Shamari alluded to this when he talked about how important it is to lean on consulting type organizations as sort of the founders of case prep and case questions in the first place. And I'm really excited to say that we'll be working with some of our partner companies like Deloitte and Accenture to deliver on some of those workshops and opportunities for you to have a safe space to practice that kind of stuff and be led by analysts and consultants and firms that are going to give you tips and tricks, whether or not you're applying to consulting opportunities or not, to be able to employ some of those tactics, get practice, and kind of see what you're up against and make sure that you're ready for when the time comes. So if you're on this webinar, you're part of our ecosystem because we have your email now, and you'll be receiving a lot of communication about what some of those workshops will entail in the next couple of weeks. So great. I'm super nosy, and I want to hear from the current fellows about what you're up to in your organizations. I think part of the beauty of going through a leadership development program is you get to see a lot, you get to touch a lot, you get to build a lot of relationships. And I know some of you are literally like on day 2. So you're still trying to figure out what your projects are going to be. Some of you, like Shamario, in your second rotation, where you've gotten to have some highlights in your reel and you're already having some impact in some of the spaces that you're in. So how about we start with you, Shamari, since you are currently on your second rotation. Tell us a little bit more about what you're up to now, what you did in your first rotation, and how you're going to continue building on that within your program.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. So it actually was pretty fun. It was CVS Health's General Management Development Program is a little bit different than like a traditional fellowship, I would say, because we're actually in like full-fledged, like full-time roles with like real teams and stuff like that. It's not just like where we are our role is like an administrative fellow. We actually have like specific titles, like specific positions. And like everyone is kind of all spread out through different business areas throughout the enterprise. So we have some people working in like Medicare, Medicaid services, some people working in Caremark, some people working with CVS strategy, some people working in retail health, like with minute clinics and health tubs and stuff like that. So for my first rotation, they split it up basically. It's 80% your actual like role work and then 20% actual GMDP work. So they split it in two. And so for the GMDP work, they split us up into committees. So we have like a career connections committee, a communications committee, like a marketing committee, and then like a recruitment committee and stuff like that. So that's kind of what your GMDP work will be structured on based off of what committee you're on. And then your actual role specific work is the other 80% that you have to dedicate most of your time to. So just for me, I was on the career connections committee and I had the chance to serve as a lead for the recruitment and events committee. So I was able to kind of reach out to different schools, set up those, in-person career fairs, go set up the virtual career fairs and stuff like that. So we could recruit for the GMDP, for the internship program and stuff like that. And this is all stuff that I was doing in addition to my actual role. So in my regular role during the time for my first rotation, I was actually working within service operations for national accounts, essentially. So I got the chance to work with account executives and the account managers. And so with CVS Health, they kind of have it broken up into like 5 different market areas. So like public and labor is like your small markets, like your mom and pop LLCs. We have like Key and Select, which is special accounts. Then we have middle market, which is like 2,000 to 5,000 employees, and then national accounts, which is like 5,000 employees or more. I think I kind of got lucky, honestly, because national accounts is like as high as it goes, and you get to work with some pretty cool companies. So I've been able to work like client facing with like Tesla, Google, like Microsoft and stuff like that. So basically any of those companies that get their employee benefits from like Aetna and CVS and stuff like that. So once like the account manager and account executives made the sale in terms of like what benefits those companies wanted for their employees, they passed it to me as an implementation manager to kind of oversee the process from the time the sale was made to the time of their effective date, which is like 1/1/20, like 1/1 at the beginning of the year, basically. So the best analogy I could use for it is like, as implementation manager, I'm like the owner of like a sports team, and then I get to kind of pick like the coaches and stuff like that. And then like the actual client is the player, and I kind of pick the coaches to kind of help facilitate everything and stuff like that. So I didn't really do anything but kind of just manage it and kind of track the process and like oversee it and keep the ball moving forward and make sure we didn't fall behind. But being able to kind of work on the client side and like the internal side as well too was super, super cool. And I really, really like that a lot. And then being able to like talk to some of my other colleagues who were doing like full-fledged like management work like on their first rotation is like super, super crazy. So yeah, it was very, very, very like humbling experience coming in like right out of college on my first rotation, like into like a full-fledged like national account manager and stuff like that. So but my second rotation, I'm looking forward to it. It's more of a strategy role, so it's a more analytical role and stuff like that, which is kind of what I wanted out of my second rotation. My first rotation was like my first time getting exposed to like the back end in terms of like healthcare delivery. So I get to work with like the account team. So we even did stuff as little like it's detailed as like the ID cards that the company gets. Like, do they want their logo on this side? Do they want it in their company colors? Do they want it in like CVS's colors? Being able to do all that stuff. So again, able to get back into like a more analytical role with strategy is something I'm looking forward to in the second rotation.
That's awesome. I forget like how much CVS has their hands in. I think we traditionally think of that business as like a place where you go get gummy bears and like hot fries and like, stuff over the counter at the pharmacy, but it also owns like one of the largest insurance carriers in the country, right? And has their hand in so much. So it's really fascinating to hear about how in the leadership development program, or the GMDP for those that are going to check it out after this, you get to do so much so early on. So really, really awesome. And glad you're thriving over there. Michael, tell us a little bit more about what you're up to, because I know you're here with me out on the West Coast and just now getting started at Common Spirit. So what are some of your projects going to look like? Do you know yet?
Yeah, I mean, I surface level. I'm pretty much in week 4 now of my fellowship, so I'm fairly new as well. But as far as just kind of some of the projects that have been brought to my attention, that have the potential for being a good fit for me to work on, moving forward in the fellowship. I'm going to be able to work alongside one of our patient experience directors. We have a employee engagement award that is being brought down from the system level, to which we are, kind of electing a specific group of people that have been exhibiting an act of human kindness. And so with that, I'll be able to kind of work alongside that director of patient experience to kind of be able to facilitate some of the communication that will be coming down from the system, our division. I'll also be able to kind of work with the provided budget towards, being able to devise, some type of outreach as far as being able to bring together some of the people that were nominated for the award, and some of the events that could be held to celebrate their nomination, as well as I'll be bringing together a selection committee to select those specific individuals. So another project I'll be working on, we're currently going renovations with our CT within one of our 2 sites over in our post-acute hospital down in Camarillo. So with that, I'll likely, I don't know the specifics to that, but I'll likely be working towards streamlining some of the operations, the workflows that has to go into work scheduling the CTs, and being able to kind of devise kind of plan a process plan on how that can kind of operate. Again, I don't know the specifics to it all, but definitely very excited for that. And then I would say a third project that has been brought to kind of my attention includes a workplace violence training, where we'll be undergoing workplace violence in-person training for both of our 2 sites that we have, both at our regional site as well as our Camarillo site, so that we can be able to meet with some of our OSHA compliance regulations for workplace violence training. So again, haven't gone into the specifics on what role I will serve in all of that, but that's kind of some of the different projects that my senior leadership team have kind of brought me in on and included me on several of the meetings and discussions.
Nice. You're going to have your hands full. So excited for you. And Sharoz, I know you're on day 2, but maybe talk about like, what do you hope to work on? Like, and you had to reflect a lot on this in the application process, but now that you're there, like, what do you think you're going to be doing, or what do you at least hope to achieve during your fellowship?
Yeah, it's I'm really excited to get started. I think just on day 2, it's just been a time where I think everyone just trusts you, like as a fellow. Like just now, like I'm going to be a project manager for a project, which I'm literally reading the details for right now. But then also, they want you to be in those leadership positions. They want to push you. They want you to be a manager at a fellow level. They want to make sure that you are prepared as you are going through your career and your journey. So I think reflecting on my application process and being here now, it feels really full circle, honestly. And I'm just really excited to kind of see those things come to life now. And at the end of the day, everyone's just here to support you. And I think for me, it definitely shows who they were during the interview process to where I am now. Like everyone truly wants to support you and wants the best for you. And so I'm just really excited to get busier and be done with the trainings that I have to do and kind of get my feet wet even more.
Yeah, get through those e-learnings and trainings, and then all the fun will begin after that. Okay, so I see there's like a flurry of questions coming in the Q&A, so we'll try to address these with the remaining time that we have, and maybe I'll do specific folks so that we can get through all 3. But Chloe, this one's for you. Someone wants to know, what is the best part about being a fellow, and what were some of the worst parts or challenges that you faced during your experience?
I enjoyed like the whole fellowship experience. I think one of the best parts is just the opportunity to see different levels of leadership. So Advocate Health does a really nice job of, like, my preceptor is the president of the hospital. So seeing her vantage point, and then also her one up and the one up above her. He was for Advocate Aurora Legacy was the chief operating officer. So we got to go to his meeting. So seeing at his vantage point, and then the CEO of the organization, he also was really involved with the fellowship or supported the fellowship. So he allowed us to come to his executive leadership team meeting. So a lot of different levels of leadership, and just being in those rooms, I was like, wow, this is just such a completely different experience that they tell you about in grad school, but then actually getting to be there and kind of see how the sausage gets made, I thought was such a cool opportunity. And then I guess, I don't know, one of the challenges I think is just balancing your work with then also wanting to connect and build relationships with different leaders, making sure you're still delivering on your projects, but then also capitalizing on the opportunity of leaders really being open to you wanting to connect with them or coming in to shadow them. So just trying to find that balance, I guess, would be one of the challenges, because I wanted to do everything, but really being realistic about the time that I had and making sure I still met my project needs and goals.
Yeah, and just a follow-up question for you then, and this one's in the chat as well, is, how do you advise people that are, stressed out during this period of either applying or even being in the fellowship itself? Like, how do you encourage them to kind of stay encouraged, for lack of a better word, and like manage that stress and cope with the things that they're going to be going through throughout the application process, in addition to like grad school and life? What did you lean on?
Yeah, so I definitely leaned on my parents and friends outside of the program. Sometimes it can get competitive, for lack of a better word, with your graduate school like cohort. And so having those friends outside of it just to take a break, and I made sure that I took breaks, whether it was exercising, spending time with family or friends, trying to fit that in as well. It just really trying to balance everything, I think, is huge. And taking a deep breath. I think it can get really overwhelming, but at the end of the day, I know it sounds cliche, but you will end up where you're kind of meant to be. And so keeping that in mind too, and just enjoying it. I think I can't remember who it was, it might have been my mentor, but she had mentioned, like, this is an opportunity for you to be in a room talking to executive leaders across all these different organizations. You don't get that opportunity every day. So really capitalizing and enjoying those moments as well, in addition to kind of balancing everything. So just trying to go along with the ride, as it's easier said than done. But I think looking back, I tried to do that, and it worked out for me. And I think it was such a cool opportunity overall, just the overall process of it.
Yeah, that's really important, because the experience that you have in some of these programs is going to be over before you know it. And then you're back to real life, and like you've got people calling in sick and like all the things that you have to do in your role after. So, I love what you said about just enjoying the moment and, making sure you stay grounded outside of what's going on in your profession, because, there's real life out there as well. And the last question I see in the chat is really just around like the characteristics or types of people that fellowships or leadership development programs want, and how do you prepare? Definitely be authentic. So like if you're trying to fit into a mold of what you think people want, like that's not going to serve you well. It's easy to suss out in the interview process, like who's in character versus who's, being authentic. So I would say definitely, don't try to fit into a mold that isn't you. A lot of our panelists talked about whether or not, project-based fellowships or experiences were more important to them than rotation or function designed fellowships where you're, in HR, or you're in finance, or you're in quality for some time. So, as you're looking at places and opportunities to apply to, don't shoot your shot at things that are not going to help you build or not going to help you get to what you need to do on the other side of this experience. I think Shamari talked about this as well, right? Of making sure that you're playing up some of your strengths, but you're using the time wisely to be sure that you're developing some of your weaknesses, because after the time is over, it's not that you lose that safe space to do some of those things, but now you have the title, you have the position, you have the people looking to you for answers, right? And so you want to make sure you're using this time wisely to be able to get those tools in your toolbox, so that, on the other side of the experience, you're not scrambling to kind of learn and fill that toolbox. So I would say, some of the more general characteristics as you join different webinars for programs, they'll tell you that they're looking for people that are self-starters. They're looking for people that are passionate about the space and that are flexible too, because you might end up on a project that you have no interest in. I mean, one of my first projects as a fellow was like joint commission prep and like survey stuff. And I'm like, I don't care about that, but I knew to be a future administrator in the healthcare space, like it was going to be important, especially if I was in the hospital setting, to understand what the heck, joint commission is looking for when they come to a facility. So be open-minded, be flexible, and be ready to learn and be challenged. I think those are the things that you cannot necessarily if they're not innate with you right now, it's hard to develop those things. So just be cognizant of, some of those softer skills or things that you just have to be sort of innately aware of as you're applying for opportunities. And then there's going to be other things that different fellowships are looking for. I mean, they want to know, are you going to be able to use different programs or databases, or at least be able to learn them, right? Be open to learn them on the job so that you can, crack a different insight or, solve a particular challenge that maybe they've been riddled with for some time. So I see a couple nods here as folks are, starting their fellowships or have completed their fellowships. They're reflecting on those times where some of these things were important. And I would say definitely reflect on now, where are your strengths and your opportunities so that you can make a good decision about where to shoot your shot and ultimately where you want to land. And on that note, I don't see any other questions in the chat, and I know we're getting close to time. So I just wanted to thank all of our panelists for joining us today. I know you have so much going on in your roles. A lot of you are literally like the new kids on the block trying to figure out what's going on, which meetings you need to be at. So we really, really appreciate you for just using this hour with us and helping people understand where to go next as they think about, the start of their career journeys, whether it's a leadership development program or fellowship or not. I know we shared some information at the beginning of the call about some of the work that we do with Peerplug. So stay tuned for future communications that you'll get from us about different opportunities to join our workshops or, meet our mentors and insiders like the folks that you see here on the screen. And again, if you haven't already, make sure you create a profile on Peerplug so that employers can find you. And so you can join or self-serve some of these opportunities that we talked about and leverage the platform to be able to do those things. So thank you so much. Thank you to whoever just put that in the chat. We appreciate your time today. And we'll go ahead and let you get back to your days or your evenings. Thank you so much for being here.